Hello everyone, we're going to continue this evening with our study of the Christmas carol, O Come, Emanuel. So last week we talked a little about the history of that, and we also looked at the first two stanzas, and now we're going to look at the second two stanzas. So just to review a little bit, we're looking about how this song teaches us that when all is hopeless, we can look to Christ for hope. And this song is written specifically to Israel, and encouraging them that even when they were in captivity, even when everything seemed like it was lost, that all the promises of God had been forgotten, that there was no hope for them, they still had the promise of the Messiah, that someone was going to come to save them, not just from their captivity, but more importantly than that, from their sin, that was going to bring them hope. And this whole song says that that person was God with us, Emanuel. And it talks about encouraging Israel to rejoice even when all seemed bleak and hopeless, because Emanuel, God with us, was going to bring hope. The Messiah, the Son of God, was going to come and was going to free them and bring hope. And in the first verse, O come, Emanuel, and ransom captive Israel that mourns in lonely exile here, until the Son of God appear. That first verse talks to us about the fact that when we are enslaved because of sin, and it seems like there's no hope for us to be free from sin, we just keep falling into sin again and again and again like Israel did, Christ is our only hope for freedom. Just like He ransomed Israel, He can ransom us, He can free us, He can pay the price to free us from our sin. The second verse says, O come, thou rod of Jesse, free thine own from Satan's tyranny, from depths of hell thy people save, and give them victory o'er the grave. So not only can we have hope in Christ, because when we're enslaved because of our sin, Christ is our only hope for freedom, but also when we are condemned because of our rebellion, Christ is our only hope for forgiveness. All of us are under God's condemnation. And not only are we enslaved to sin where we can't stop sinning, but because of that sin, we deserve the penalty of that sin. We deserve hell, like it says in this stanza. We deserve to be punished forever, separated from God. But Christ is our hope. It says He can save us from the depths of tyranny. He is that rod of Jesse, that branch that came from David's seemingly dead tree that gave new life, and they gave victory over the grave. When we're condemned because of our rebellion, Christ is our only hope for forgiveness. Now we're going to look at the last two stanzas, at least the last two that most hymnals have. There are many other stanzas, but these are the last two that we'll focus on. The third stanza says, O come, thou day spring from on high, and cheer us by thy drawing nigh. Disperse the gloomy clouds of night, and death's dark shadow put to flight. Rejoice, rejoice, Emanuel shall come to thee, O Israel. So here, in each one of these stanzas, it gives a name for God, for Jesus. In the first stanza, Emmanuel. In the second stanza, Rod of Jesse. And in this third stanza, it calls Jesus Dayspring. The idea of day spring is those first lights in the morning. After a long, cold, gloomy, hard night, we look and we see those first rays of light coming across the horizon. And that brings hope that the sun is rising, that there's a new day, that warmth is coming, that the night is over. Light has come. That's what Jesus is. He is our dayspring. He is that light that brings hope in the midst of night, in the midst of darkness, in the midst of confusion and discouragement. Christ is the dayspring. He is the sunrise. He is the light. He is our hope. This comes from Luke chapter 1. In Luke chapter 1, we have Zechariah talking about John the Baptist and how John the Baptist was born, and this miracle that God did even when Zechariah and Elizabeth were really old and it seemed impossible, and Zechariah couldn't even believe it when the angel told him, so he became dumb. He couldn't speak for a while until John was born, and then Zechariah showed his faith in God by writing John's name on the tablet, that he wasn't going to be named after him, but he was going to be named in obedience to God. He was going to be named John. And knowing that John was going to be the forerunner for the Messiah, John was the one that was going to tell everyone the Messiah is coming. He was the signal that Jesus was coming. That gave Zechariah hope. And Zechariah says in Luke 1:76, "And thou, child," speaking to about John, "shall be called the prophet of the highest. For thou shalt go before the face of the Lord to prepare his ways, to give knowledge of salvation unto his people by the remission of their sins, through the tender mercy of our God." And here is where this passage comes from. "Whereby the dayspring from on high hath visited us, to give light to them that sit in darkness and in the shadow of death, to guide our feet into the way of peace." Zechariah was so happy because he realized John was the promised prophet that was going to prepare the way for Christ. And for so long, Israel had suffered because of their sin. For so long, they had lived in darkness under the tyranny of Rome and under the tyranny of Satan and under their own sinful choices. And they were so confused and they were so hopeless and they had no idea what was going to happen in the future or how they were going to get out of it. And it seemed like it was complete darkness with no hope. And then Zechariah saw Jesus was coming. That day spring, those first rays of light after a long dark night were coming, and that signaled hope. That signaled, like it says here, who's going to give light to them that sit in darkness and the shadow of death. He was going to guide their feet to the way of peace. For all of those, like again the song says, those of us who are in gloomy clouds of night with death's dark shadows, it says, Jesus, with his coming, cheers us. Just like those first rays of the morning give hope and encouragement and light. The darkness is over. Night has passed. Day has come. That's what Jesus meant to everyone on this earth. His coming meant that we no longer have to be in night. We no longer have to live with confusion, not knowing who we are or what's going to happen. We know that Jesus has come, and he has come to disperse the gloomy clouds of night, to show that night is over, and death's dark shadows he puts to flight. No longer do we have to walk in darkness. No longer do we have to continue in sin. No longer in hopelessness, because the third thing that this song teaches us is that when we are lost because of our own wandering, we're in darkness, we have no idea how to find the path, Christ is our only hope for being found. He is the dayspring. Again, it's like someone wandering, lost in the wilderness. That's pitch dark outside. They have no idea where they are. And then those first beams of light come up, and now they know they can find the path. They can find their way home if they just follow the light. That's what Christ is for us. We got lost. We are lost in darkness and in sin because of our selfishness and our pride. We've destroyed our lives. We're confused. We're helpless. But Christ came to bring light, to disperse the gloomy clouds, to take away the shadow of death, and to give us hope and light. When all is hopeless, look to Christ for hope. When we're enslaved because of our sin, Christ is our only hope for freedom. When we are condemned because of our rebellion, Christ is our only hope for forgiveness. When we are lost because of our wandering, Christ is our only hope for being found. And the last stanza says, O come, thou key of David, come, and open wide our heavenly home. Make safe the way that leads on high, and close the path to misery. Rejoice, rejoice. Emanuel shall come to thee, O Israel. The last thing we see here is that when we are shut out because of our foolishness, Christ is our only hope for family. When we are shut out because of our foolishness, Christ is our only hope for family. This passage refers to Revelation. The stanza refers to Revelation chapter 3, verse 7. And it says, "And to the angel of the church in Philadelphia write these things, saith he that is holy, he that is true, he that hath the key of David, he that openeth, and no man shutteth, and shutteth, and no man openeth." This is referring to a passage in the Old Testament in Isaiah chapter 11 when there was a wicked treasurer by the name of Shebna, and he was doing wrong, and God said, "I'm going to take away your position. You think you have all the authority. You think you have all the might. You think you can lift yourself up." He was going to make this special grave for himself, and thinking that he was so popular and he was so important. And God says, "I'm going to take away your position." And he says, "I'm going to give it to another guy." And this guy's name, if I can find it here, is, it says in Isaiah 11:20, "And it shall come to pass in that day that I will call my servant Eliakim, the son of Hilkiah." So Eliakim was going to take the place of Shebna, and it says he's going to give to Eliakim the key of David. What it's saying here is he's going to take the authority from this bad person and he's going to give it to this good person. And he's going to give him the authority of the kingdom of David. He's going to make him king. So now he has the authority to make decisions, to open and to shut opportunities for his people as the figure of authority during that time. And this ultimately points to Jesus. Jesus is the ultimate key of David. He is the one that truly has all authority to do whatever he wants, to let in whoever he wants and to shut out whoever he wants. He is the one that has the key of David to rule over the throne of David as king over Israel and over all the world. He is the one that has the authority. And as the one that has the authority, he is the only one that can open our heavenly home for us. There is no other way to get to heaven except through Christ. Christ is the key that opens up the door to heaven. He is the Son of David. He is the rightful king. He is the only one that has authority to allow us into heaven. Make safe the way that leads on high and close the path to misery. He can open the path to heaven, to joy, to happiness, and he can close the door on misery. How good to know that our lives are in God's hands, that Christ has the key. He has the authority as King to open heaven to us, to open joy and happiness to us, and to close shut and lock the door and throw away the key for misery. That is what he gave us when he came. We as sinners, because of our foolishness and wrong choices, we have been shut out. We don't deserve to go to heaven. The door for us has been locked because of our sin. But because of Jesus, because of his death on the cross, because he came as Emanuel on Christmas, he took that key and he opened the door to heaven as the rightful heir to David. He has the authority to open heaven for us and to welcome us into his family, to reconcile us to God, so that now instead of being shut out like a poor person that has been thrown out of the house and the door has been locked and they're sitting there looking in at the warmth and at the happiness and the joy of that family and they can't come in because of their sin. Now Jesus opens the door, and because of his goodness and his authority and his death on the cross, he says, welcome home. Come in to be part of my family. Come into have a heavenly home with me. And you will no longer have to be homeless. You will no longer have to be alone. You will no longer have to be without family, because I am the key of David. And when I open, no man can shut. And when I shut, no man can open. When all is hopeless, look to Christ for hope. When we are enslaved because of our sin, Christ is our only hope for freedom. When we are condemned because of our rebellion, Christ is our only hope for forgiveness. When we are lost because of our wandering, Christ is our only hope for being found. And when we are shut out because of our foolishness, Christ is our only hope for family. as you sing this hymn or hear it being sung and other carols that are focused on Christmas and Christ's birth, really meditate on these truths and praise God with all of your heart that when all hope is lost, we can look to Christ for hope and share that hope with others this Christmas time. May God bless you.